So is Battlefield finally back with Battlefield 6 after a couple of years of some rough patches? That's the question of the day. This is going to be my spoiler-free, honest review of Battlefield 6, the campaign, the multiplayer, all the goodness that is included with this game. If you enjoy this kind of content, guys, leave it a like, subscribe for more. It really helps the channel. If you don't like it, let me know what you dislike so I can improve the content in the future. Let's go ahead and jump straight into this, not wasting any time. So I want to talk about both sides of things. People are going to be expecting, multiplayer for the most part, but I want to talk about the campaign first. Again, spoiler free. I'm not going to be showing too much kind of footage or anything like that. Maybe some trailers just to avoid spoilers. It's a pretty short campaign. Personally speaking, I enjoy the shorter kind of campaigns for games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, things like that. A little bit too long, and it just becomes kind of like it drags on too much, especially with this kind of format. But it sits in around 5 hours if you're kind of really kind of going at it. If you're taking your time with it, it's probably gonna take you 6-7 hours. And also that's on regular mode. If you're playing on hardcore, then of course it's gonna take you probably upwards of like 6, 7, 8 hours, maybe more, because you're gonna have to take a little bit more time with it. Now, the campaign itself, you've probably heard mixed reviews. Some people said it's bad. Some people said it's pretty good. I think it's a solid campaign overall. The campaign itself, it has some really nice kind of cinematics that you would expect from games like this. And again, I make the comparison to Call of Duty a lot because Call of Duty is known for those kind of big cinematics sort of style of set pieces in their campaigns, and it's sort of like that. And you kind of get the sense of that because Vince Zampella, who is one of the leads with this game, he obviously worked originally in Infinity Ward on the original Modern Warfare games, which I think were some of the best Call of Duty games, both for multiplayer and campaign. And again, he's one guy out of many, but you can see sort of his influence in it, which is nice. And again, if you don't know, after Call of Duty, he went on to work on Titanfall 1 and 2, and now he's working on Battlefield and all that. And so yeah, again, I don't want to put the whole thing on one guy. Obviously, a lot of people work on these games, but again, I think you can see his influence in that and whatnot. So in terms of the campaign, again, the set pieces are great. Audio is great. It's a lot of fun. Kind of reminds me of like old school Call of Duty campaigns, which is a good thing in my opinion. Again, I say this as someone who's played pretty much every Call of Duty game. I'm a little less familiar with Battlefield. I was a little bit late to the party. I'm not a veteran. I dabbled a little bit with Battlefield 3 back in the day, not a ton. I lightly touched Battlefield 4, but I really kind of started getting into it with like Battlefield 1. I know it's weird, but so I'm not like a complete newcomer or noob, but I'm also not a veteran. I'm somewhere in the middle, so it gives me an interesting perspective. So in terms of the campaign, the story wise, right, everything else was great, right? It was amazing. There's so many different kind of elements where again, it's just kind of those cinematic experiences is what I would say. In terms of the story, that's kind of where people are kind of iffy on, right? The story is good. it's good, but it lacks depth, I would say. It could have been fleshed out a little bit more, and that could have honestly bumped up the score for me. Personally, it's a really fun campaign. I think the story is intriguing. It just feels like they didn't really completely flesh it out and go as deep with it as they could have. But there's a lot of it kind of almost felt like there was a mixture of what, again, to kind of reference Call of Duty, of like, the Modern Warfare series with a hint of some of the kind of, sort of Black Ops style sort of stuff that you'd expect from the Black Ops series as well. Not that dark and that kind of mysterious, but a little bit of a hint of that, which was really, really interesting to say the very least. So I think the story was solid. Again, it could have been deeper, but for what it was, I think they made it work. And I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. It felt like a good military shooter story, just that it lacked being fleshed out. So if I was to just rate the campaign, I would probably give it somewhere between like a 7.5 and an 8 maybe, but it could have been a 9 if they would have fleshed it out a little bit more and deepened the sort of the lore and all the stuff kind of going on. That said, I would love to see them continue the story rather than just have like these random one-off stories. And I think that's what Call of Duty does good, that they should learn from, is some kind of continuation of a story to some way, some form or another. Anyways, moving on from the campaign, which again I think is really fun. Again, took me about 5.5 hours, maybe close to 6, just under 6, 5.5 to beat. Multiplayer obviously is hard to sort of review because there's always going to be patches. They're gonna tweak things. Meta's going to change, things like that over time. But as of launch, and again, I'm recording this about 2 or 3 days after launch. It's currently the 12th of October. It's a really fun game with a lot of potential. It's way better than 2042, obviously. It's less of an absolute mess than 2042 was. I think my complaint with the current state is, number one, the controller settings are just not good. Everyone's complaining about the same thing. It feels weird, especially compared to the beta. The beta felt like you can get some really good controller settings. In here, it just feels like you're always tweaking and you can't find good settings. And then just having so many different settings, which again is not a bad thing to have all these different options for people that want to go deeper with their settings, but the settings out of the gate, out of the box, if you will, are just not good. If they were really solid out of the box, right out of the gate, then I would say, okay, great. For people that don't want to tweak more than maybe their actual sensitivity and they don't want to go beyond that with dead zones and all this and that, then it's pretty good. It'd be pretty good if they had it solid out of the gate, but they don't. Right out of the gate, it's like, it just feels like trash. And they have all these different presets. If you can have, if you want something similar to Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5 or whatever, but even those don't feel like, in my opinion, they don't actually feel like those games. Like, those games still felt better weirdly. So I don't know how to explain it, but right at launch, that's kind of my biggest gripe that's been frustrating me the most with multiplayer, is ironically the controller settings. Keyboard and mouse, people have been saying is in a good place. I haven't played keyboard and mouse, so not going to go into that. In terms of everything else, time to kill, I think personally, is a little bit too fast. It feels like they're trying to be Call of Duty a little bit too much. They're trying to take a little bit too much of that Call of Duty kind of feel. Even then, for a Call of Duty game, it still kind of feels like it would be a little bit too quick. But especially for a Battlefield game, time to kill, in my opinion, at launch feels too quick for me personally. That's just me personally speaking. The whole setting of Battlefield 6, which I've failed to mention at the beginning, is sort of a near future kind of setting, right? So it's about set in 2027, 2028, if you will, the campaign. And so it's very, very kind of modern military shooter for the most part. So you're gonna get a lot of modern guns like the M4, for example, and a variety of different guns like that. So the gun selection, I think, is really nice, really good. Again, especially if you're used to those kind of modern guns, it's like the Scar and the M4 and different things like that, right? Really good. Customization with the guns, again, very good. I think again, kind of the gunsmith in Call of Duty in the past few years kind of reminds me a little bit of that, where to some degree. So you have multiple different attachments and that you can kind of equip for your gun, and just that kind of screen, though, it's the same kind of screen that reminds me of the gunsmith. But anyways, again, that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying like, oh, Battlefield's copying Call of Duty. No, you take what's good from other games and you kind of make it your own in your own kind of creative process. Same thing with musicians. When a musician makes a song, they're often influenced by other songs and they kind of make it their own and take influence. But anyways, I digress. The point is that that's pretty good. I think the customization is pretty good. The leveling system is confusing for a lot of people, and it's also a little bit slow. I think it's a little too slow. I've heard some people complaining about that. I think I have a little bit of gripes with that as well. Like, I mean, I put in, I think, like over 10 hours, maybe over 12 hours. I'm sitting at about level 20 or so. I guess that's okay, but again, once you start kind of leveling up, once you get to about 15, it really feels like it slows down. So some of the progression has been confusing for people. Some of the way that the challenges are kind of labeled has been a little bit confusing. So a little bit more clarity on that would be nice. Again, maybe they'll patch things in the future and whatnot. Overall, the maps, I really like the maps. I think there's a good selection of maps in this game. Personally speaking, I really like them, from Cairo to like New York, just like all these different set pieces is just really nice. They're stunning, visually stunning game, beautiful game. You know, again, the audio is pretty good overall. You know, it's a lot of fun. The game is a lot of fun. But like I said, my biggest gripe right now is the controller settings and the time to kill, which kind of, you know, I think is a little bit too quick. But besides that, like I said, you have your classic conquest mode. You know, you got breakthrough, you got you know, escalation, you got rush, you got TDM, you got domination, you got King of the Hill, which is basically hard point from Call of Duty. You know, which again is not unique to Call of Duty. I'm just kind of I know there's probably going to be a lot of people thinking in terms of Call of Duty, a lot of maybe Call of Duty players new to the series for Battlefield, you know, things like that. So overall, game is really good, really solid game, a lot of fun. Multiplayer is really fun. Like I said, I love the weapons, I love the you know, the different maps, the environments. I think it's stunningly visually stunning and beautiful. You know, like I said, a couple gripes here and there with the multiplayer, a couple gripes, like I said, with the campaign. Feel like it could have been fleshed out a little bit better. You know, I feel like there could have been cooler customization options also in the multiplayer, you know, in terms of like and again, I'm not saying like Call of Duty, I don't want like clowns running around the battlefield, but just a little bit cooler customization options for, you know, skins and also weapon camos. Some of the weapon camos could have been a little bit better. And again, just the progression to unlock these things, first of all, is a little bit confusing. The UI, I'll say also, or so not the UI, the menu, like the main menu is atrocious. I think the main menu is just a mess and it's just a nightmare. And that's been people's complaint with Call of Duty in the past few years as well. So that's something that I just wish developers would go back to, just making really cool, unique, you know, main menus, if you will. So that's not good. But overall, I think the game is really fun. I think, you know, if you're a fan of the FPS genre in general, whether you're a Battlefield fan or a Call of Duty fan, this is definitely a game that's a must play. It's a really good game, really solid game, a lot of fun to be had, a lot of hours to be kind of, you know, fun to be had in this game. So I think I'll give this game like a solid, like, man, I don't know. Like I said, there's a mixture of stuff, you know, between the campaign and the multiplayer. It's at least a solid 8. I'm thinking about maybe pushing it to an 8.5. So let's give it an 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, I'm a little bit mixed, but I think some things could end up being patched for multiplayer. Yes, I would have liked the campaign to be fleshed out a little bit more, but I think 8.5, you know, it's a really solid game, a lot of fun. It could have been a 9. It could have been over a 9 if the campaign was a little bit more fleshed out, if the controller settings at launch was a little bit better. You know, that I think was the biggest thing for me that just kind of frustrated me with the multiplayer. But anyways, that's my thoughts. If there's anything I left out, if you have any questions, let me know. Again, I just try to give you guys my general thoughts, not go so in depth that I'm, you know, ranting for like half an hour to an hour, but give you just kind of my overarching kind of general thoughts and impressions and honest thoughts and review of the game. So what would you rate the game if you've played it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're still on the fence, this is light years better than 2042. 2042 is an absolute atrocious mess that like we don't talk about. Okay, we don't talk about that one, which is really sad. So I think Battlefield 6 is a bright future. There's a whole roadmap ahead. We're getting another map just in a couple weeks already, just a couple weeks after launch, and then you know, in November we're getting a second map as well. There's the BR that's coming at some point, so we'll have to talk about that when the time comes. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, subscribe for more. Until the next one, game on. See you guys later.
Hey you! What are you doing? Join the Skeleton Army! Do it today! Don't wait till tomorrow because tomorrow might never come. The Earth is gonna fade, that's inevitable. The next second of your life's not even promised, so you better think about where you're going, and you might as well just join the Skeleton Army. Plus, we do kind of like you a little bit, so it'd be nice to see you around here. But if you don't want to, hey, your loss. See you later.